This is a song called Infinite, and it's by a band called Pavilion, who I've been working with, and that stuff is now on Spotify. So if you have Spotify, you could have a listen to this track. Here's the track bounced as stems from my studio computer, and I'm just going to highlight some of the areas in the track that I think are good examples of the type of thing that I do often in arrangement. They're little tweaks to tighten them up and to make them pop a little bit. I'm going to play the start of the track. So that that's the refrain. That's what I'm calling the refrain, and that's supposed to be the catchy hook part, and that was within the original vocal, but it didn't exist there at the start initially. So we chucked that in because of this whole idea that we read about Spotify changing the listening habits of users, where they won't listen for very long before they switch. So we wanted to get in a little bit of melody before the verse. So we actually put that in there in the second half of the intro. And it's a direct reflection of what happens at the end of the song and after the choruses. So we wanted to just like ram that point home. Initially, the bass comes in and it's long notes. Okay, so it's doing that, but then and here's where the bass starts and stops. So it happens in short little stabby sections, which you can see here. So it completely drops out and then it comes in occasionally. Now dive into the city crowds. Oh, it's disappear. Back home I'm safe, but I'm still on solid ground. But I've been waiting for years to drive on through the... And the idea with this is, if you drop out the bass, then that is a huge difference it makes to the fullness of a track. So I always like to play with dynamics like that, because if something stays in all the time, then your ear tires of it and you almost stop hearing it. So by taking something out, you can bring back the impact later on. So breaking it up into short little stabs, the idea is that it feels fresher. So I just wanted to look at this little transition here. So where this happens on the second verse, I'll play you what it originally did was this. So that was the original. It's a short transition. So hardly any drum fill. So we felt like there should be a longer drum fill. So I re-recorded the drummer doing a super long fill and quantized it, and then added extra MIDI drums underneath and just ratcheted the whole thing up until it was almost distorting. So now the drum fill is twice as long in terms of length, and also I'm kind of dropping a few things out to reveal the drum fill and having the vocal echoed out over the top of it. And this is the transition into the first chorus. We just thought that gave a bit more of tension and release. And there's a lot of that in all kind of arrangements. You build up the tension, or you take something away and then you bring it back again. Where we come into this chorus here, the next thing I'd like to talk about is how the chorus becomes more busy. So not only are we adding extra layers of vocals so that that feels a bit more like a massed choral effect, but also I'm adding different guitar parts that aren't just block chords, which is what it originally did. We've added some melody parts that are kind of like arpeggiations, which means like on a guitar where you're plucking through the different notes in the chord. And so the pattern of playing makes it feel like it's actually going quicker at that point. But the tempo hasn't changed at all. The idea is you busy it up to make it feel like there's more stuff going on.
We're interconnected. Just touchdown. A city gets mesmerizing. I feel the power.
So that's that high guitar part there. That's what I'm talking about. You've got these big, thick, chunky guitar distortion chords, but over the top of it is this quite clean, echoing, arpeggiated guitar part. You can hear a little bit of modulation within that as well. The other thing with the backing vocals is that I'm adding layers of harmonizers and vocoders to it to thicken out the texture. And obviously a lot of reverb on that. And then on the synths, what's going on there? That's just adding a harmony layer to the notes within the track. So just extra textures being added in. In verse 2, I always like to add a few extra things to make it feel like we've moved on a bit. So we're definitely not going back to a repeat of verse 1. Obviously the chord structure is the same, but there are extra kind of weaving guitar parts coming in. So those weaving chords, just like take it somewhere slightly different. We've also got a little kind of middle 8 section just before that, just an emotional change within the song. And it's kind of like a release, and we made it deliberately a bit like Bruce Springsteen. And I also actually added a kind of sliding guitar part that kind of just slides upwards to just make it feel like it's going a bit crazy. So all together. And that builds up the tension, and then you get this another release at that point, and we're in the outro of the song, but we're also going to repeat the refrain over and over again. First of all, we're changing the drum pattern so that there's no sort of snare repeating pattern. It's just a kick drum and the hi-hat. Different guitars coming in. So it's short and sweet, and we feel like, you know, that's kind of a blast of energy, and it's over pretty quickly, and it leaves something memorable to the listener. That's what we try to do. I don't know whether we're successful, but we've tried to kind of make it as punchy as possible. Okay, I hope that was helpful to you. That's just a little crash course in the arrangement of a track.